Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
What's going on, guys? You're listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Foreman. With us getting closer and closer to the return of the NBA, we're getting more and more news. It seems like pretty much every day. If you missed my podcast on Monday, I talked about, who has the best chance of making that 8th spot, the 8 seeding games, and, who has the hardest and easiest schedule. So if you missed that, make sure you go back and check that out. As for this week, or today's episode, I want to start out by talking about LeBron James and how he won at the BET Awards. He won Sportsman of the Year. So I want to start out by discussing that. Damian Lillard and Zion Williamson have been named the 2K21, the NBA 2K21 cover athletes. So I also want to talk about that and if they were the right choices for that achievement, for that job. Draymond Green talked about who has the best odds in his eyes to win the NBA Finals, and he's putting the Lakers ahead of the Clippers. With as far as, chances to win the finals. So I want to talk about that, and then make sure you stick around to the very end of the show. I did it last week. I'm going to do it again this week. I want to talk some MJ, some Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, a little hypothetical. Would they have gone 7 for 7 after, winning that 6th championship? So make sure you guys stick around to the very end. Don't go anywhere. But like I said, I want to start out by talking LeBron. Now, he was named the BET Sportsman of the Year. And if you aren't familiar with Sportsman of the Year, basically, it's their version of Male Athlete of the Year. They renamed it several years ago. But basically what that means is the best male athlete in that past year. And it went to LeBron James. It's actually the 6th or 7th time I think LeBron has won the award. I think this might have been the 7th time he's won it. So congrats to LeBron. He doesn't always win that regular season MVP award. And it's nice to see him get some recognition and, some achievements outside of just the NBA awards. It's good to see all aspects, all different types of the award shows. He's getting recognized for his greatness. So props to LeBron, props to the BET Awards for recognizing LeBron as, the Sportsman of the Year or Male Athlete of the Year. But who was he up against? Let's talk about that. So it was LeBron up against Kawhi Leonard, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Odell Beckham Jr., who did not have a very good year at all, actually. So I was surprised to see him even in the running at all. Patrick Mahomes and Steph Curry, who basically sat out this entire year. So are they talking about all of 2019 as well as 2020? Is it just 2020? Is it, are we going back to the 2018, 2019 season? I wasn't quite sure since we saw Odell's name in there and Steph. Steph's been out this entire year, so I was a little confused to see him in the running. Like I said, same thing with Odell, him not having a very good year at all his first year in Cleveland. So I was a little surprised to see those two. So those are pretty much easy wins right there when you're talking about, beating those two guys out for the award. So those are two guys who probably aren't going to win the award. Then Kawhi, Giannis, and Patrick Mahomes. So obviously Kawhi, we know what he did last year, and we know what he's doing this year. We know he's having a very good season, offensively and defensively. And we saw what he did last year. Like I said, winning the finals in Toronto, giving Toronto their first NBA Finals award. Probably, I don't want to say it, but probably the last one they're going to see for a little while, unless we get surprised in the next coming years and they make another big signing or something like that. But nonetheless, he gave Toronto the championship they were looking for such a long time. Won the Finals MVP, beat the Golden State Warriors, somewhat dismantling that dynasty. So we know what Kawhi did last year. He's very well deserving to be in the running of this award as well. Deserving of even winning this award. There's also Giannis, who was in the running. The regular season MVP last year, and maybe the regular season MVP this year. Like I said in past, I do think LeBron is the MVP this year when all things are looked, all aspects, when you look at all different angles. But, Giannis, just statistically and just looking on paper and looking at the votes so far, before the actual thing happens, he's been the top dog. He's been that lead vote getter, and he's the front runner for the MVP, so we know what he is and why he's in the running for this award. But we probably will see him end up winning that award, so maybe that's why we see BET tossing LeBron this one. But we know why Kawhi, Giannis were in there. Then we know Patrick Mahomes. I want to talk about him a little bit more in just a second. But let's talk about LeBron and why he did win this award. He is in his 17th season in the NBA, his second season with the Los Angeles Lakers. We know last season was obviously a disappointment for that team and LeBron not making the playoffs. The first time he hasn't made the playoffs in I believe since maybe the second year in his career. It's been that long since he's made the NBA playoffs, which is a testament to him and his greatness, his willingness to will a team to the playoffs no matter what that team looks like. But he couldn't quite get it done last year with the injury and all the other Lakers and their injuries being in that roster and that lineup being moved around constantly, not knowing roles or not knowing, that AD drama that happened in the middle of the season definitely ruined that team chemistry. So lots of excuses, lots of reasons last year didn't work out the way it did, the way they were expecting it to be, which is why this season is so great, is so awesome for LeBron. Kind of shutting up all the haters that were doubting him last year, to come out to somewhat switch positions to go to play point guard, then to go and average 25 points, almost 11 assists, 8 rebounds, again in his 17th season, second in LA. And, what a bigger stage to play in, what bigger expectations to have than playing as a Los Angeles Laker, in the city of Los Angeles. And, he's owned up to it, especially this year, has shown everybody that he is capable of living up to the bright lights. It will in no way will he wilt under the pressure, like we somewhat saw him do last year. But again, I think it had had to do in large part with that injury to the groin, since it was the first major injury arguably in LeBron's career. It would cause him to miss the most time he's ever missed. So that's why last year was so down. It makes this year even greater, in my opinion. And what he's done for the Lakers, getting them to that number 1 seed in the Western Conference. Like I said, switching positions to the point guard position, averaging almost 11 assists a game, leading the league in assists. Again, in his 17th year. We know what he is, though, a facilitator. Really has taken, diving into that role this year, taking it upon himself to get the offense going and to get other guys like Anthony Davis involved. So kudos to him. We know what he's doing this year. However, was he the best choice for this award, just based off this year and maybe looking at a little bit last year? Since Steph and Odell were in the running, I'm guessing somewhat we were looking at last year, as well as this year. It wasn't just this year, and when you're talking about everything they looked at. So we'll look at last year a little bit as well. Patrick Mahomes, what he has done in the NFL over the last 2 years is insane. 3 years ago, you say Patrick Mahomes, and I don't necessarily know who you're talking about. 3.5 to 4 years ago by now, probably. But, he wasn't starting his first year in Kansas City. Not a big name guy, not someone, obviously, like I said, a guy who kind of went from not zero, but basically zero to hero, 0 to 100 very quick. And in large part to do with his rookie season winning the MVP award, throwing a whopping 50 touchdowns, insane, winning the MVP award. It just basically proved to everybody he is already an elite quarterback, if not the best quarterback in the NFL today. He's clearly one of the best 3 quarterbacks. You can't even argue that. So we know what Mahomes is, and we know the insane performances he's put on over the past couple of years. And I don't think he is somebody that should be overlooked. When you're comparing all the other runners in this argument, Kawhi, Giannis, Mahomes, Patrick Mahomes has to be the closest front runner to LeBron, the closest in the voting to LeBron, again, in my opinion, because of what he did in the National Football League last year and the last 2 years. What he did, in my opinion, is more impressive than what Giannis did. Just simply the one MVP. If he follows it up with a championship, yes, I think Giannis is deserving of this award, and we talk about Giannis in a higher and a better light than what we do now. But he didn't. We saw him get somewhat exposed by Kawhi. We did see Kawhi win the finals and win Finals MVP. However, it was against a somewhat depleted Warriors team. It was not at all at full strength. Also have to take that into consideration as well. Mahomes, however, like I said, winning the MVP award just to follow it up with, a season at the beginning getting to a little bit of a rocky start, suffering a small injury, then only to come back, throwing 26 touchdowns for only 5 interceptions, only played 14 games in the regular season last year. And then, like I said, follows the regular season MVP award with the Super Bowl, just a Super Bowl ring, wins a Super Bowl and then becomes the Super Bowl MVP. So in his second season starting at least. So props to him. We know what he did and has done in the NFL the past couple of years, and if anybody's going to challenge LeBron for that award, it should be Patrick Mahomes. But I'm super happy for LeBron to get that award. Giannis and Kawhi, it makes sense they were in the running, but what they did, also what they've also done in the past couple of years, yes, it's been impressive. Giannis won the MVP, Kawhi won the Finals MVP and the championship, but it's a testament, in my opinion, to LeBron and his greatness and how highly, some people do rate him. Even after a bad, quote unquote, bad year with the Lakers his first year, even though he averaged a bad, 27-8-8 or 27-7-7. Which for anybody else is the best season of their career. But for LeBron, he had an off year. They didn't make the playoffs. Yeah. And for that to happen, him to come back this year, he hasn't won the finals yet by any means, like a Patrick Mahomes has already has done this year. That's why, usually, I guess maybe, like I said, maybe they're making up for maybe they know Giannis is gonna win that regular season MVP award because this is how the voters are now. They're gonna vote Giannis over LeBron, basically off of his stats and maybe some offensive win shares and his PER, which isn't even as good as what it was at the beginning of the season. But it's stacking up to look like Giannis to win that is gonna win that MVP award. LeBron James very well deserving of that award. This award is somewhat just showing, I think, he's still that guy. He's still the best player in the NBA. You put him up against Kawhi and Giannis in a popularity vote. This is essentially a popularity, vote open to voters, and he wins. So he's still the most popular guy in the league. I think his stats, moving to point guard, still averaging 25, 10, and 8 in his 17th season is, again, a testament to his greatness and who he is. So congrats to LeBron. If LeBron couldn't win, I would have gave it to Patrick Mahomes. Again, I would have gave it to Mahomes over Kawhi and Giannis. But I do understand why Giannis and Kawhi were in the running. They do deserve to be in the running. Didn't quite understand why Steph and Odell Beckham Jr., however, were in the running. But again, props to LeBron. He's still the best player in the NBA, and he's still the best or the most popular player in the NBA. However, that could be changing here pretty soon, with a new guy coming in like Zion Williamson, popularity, it's, I don't want to say it's moving, because obviously LeBron's always going to be that guy, but, there's somewhat of a new guy coming in, and I don't want to say he's stealing, LeBron's show, stealing all the popularity, all the fans, but, he's getting a lot of them. He's getting a lot of attention. Zion Williamson, obviously, is who I'm speaking of. So when I come back after this break, I want to talk about Damian Lillard and that guy Zion Williamson, how those two have been named the 2K21 cover athletes. I want to break that down, if it was the right decision or not. Congratulate those guys as well. So don't go anywhere. I'm going to be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, guys, to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. I'm Casey Foreman. Like I said before the break, I want to talk about the next cover athletes of NBA 2K21. There are a couple of them as of right now. I believe we're still going to be getting a Legend Edition, which I'm hoping is Kobe Bryant. I think we're all expecting it to be Kobe because of the tragedy that happened this year. I'm hoping they honor him the right way, making him the Legend Edition of NBA 2K21. But as far as the cover athlete and the next generation cover, we have our athletes. Damian Lillard is going to be the ordinary cover of the 2K21, and Zion Williamson will be the next generation cover of 2K21. So congrats to Damian Lillard as well as Zion Williamson. Both guys deserving of the award. They don't want to take anything away from them. I think it's super cool that these two guys are going to be on the cover. I think it's an interesting and cool decision. I support both guys being on the cover. Super cool. Congrats to both of those guys. I want to start out by talking about Dame being on the cover of the ordinary cover of the 2K21. So, like I said, a very cool decision making Dame the cover athlete of the ordinary 2K21. Somewhat of a different route to take. However, usually the guy on 2K21 or the guy on 2K is a guy who just had a breakout season, a super big, impressive season, maybe just won a championship, made a big move, won an MVP award or something. We saw Giannis be on it last year. We saw LeBron be on it after moving to Miami and winning a championship and being an MVP. So we saw KD be on it after winning an MVP award, Steph. So we've seen all these guys be on it after winning, these big awards. And, the same similarity with those guys, like I just said, usually they're in big markets. Guys like Steph, LeBron, Anthony Davis, guys who are on big markets and big market teams like the Lakers, Heat. Who else was I just talking about? Golden State. So just big market teams. Kyrie was on it when he was in Boston, so he was coming off a championship. So, usually guys in big markets coming off big accomplishments or, big seasons. So it's cool that Damian Lillard is on it, but, he's not necessarily coming off this huge, impressive season. He's kind of just being Dame, being himself, being as good as he kind of always is, which is no knock to him. But like I said, usually the guy on 2K is the guy who just made that big jump, the big wow up and coming guy. So it makes sense to be Zion on that But I think maybe they're just appreciating Dame, showing everyone that he is, in fact, a top 10 player in this league. Definitely a top 3 or 4 point guard in this league without doubt. So props to Dame. Definitely deserves it. This year alone, he's averaging 29 points, 8 assists, 39% from the 3-point line. So we know what he is. He's a established veteran, all NBA point guard, and he is the Portland Trailblazers. Like I said earlier, talking about the prior guys on 2K in big markets, on big market teams, we see Dame in a small market in Portland, on the Trailblazers, and we see him being on the cover. So that's also another props to him, or impressive for him being on a small market team, getting to be on the cover of NBA 2K, kind of like Giannis last year. He was coming off the MVP season, which is honestly why, like I was talking about, but a small market team in Milwaukee, the Bucks. Dame, obviously a small market team in the Trailblazers, so good for him, despite being in the small market, getting his name out there even more. For those people who aren't too fond of him or don't know him that well, maybe because he's in a smaller market on a smaller team like the Trailblazers. This is another way to get his name out there even more, get people to appreciate his game even more. Probably going to have some of his music in there as well, rightfully so. So awesome for Dame, super happy for him. As far as, what he's accomplished, a couple of years ago, 2017, 2018, he was All-NBA first team at the point guard position. So that's basically ranking him the number 1 point guard, number 1 at that position in that season. When there are point guards like Russell Westbrook, Damian, or Russell Westbrook, Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving, elite guys out there that he's beating out for that number 1 spot. Huge props to him for getting there. Some people didn't necessarily see that coming, but in my way, I saw that as a way of, making up for the disrespect of him not making some of those teams in prior years. Putting him on the highest possible honor of the number one team, All-NBA first team. So he's been an All-NBA first-team point guard. He's also been an All-NBA last year. He was the All-NBA second-team guard. So he's been on an All-NBA team twice now. He's a 5 or 6-time NBA All-Star. So props to Dame. We know what he is and what he represents. But when we talk about 2K, I can't help but bring up, if you guys haven't heard about this, it's a funny kind of just like a theory, kind of a theory type thing. I'm trying to think of the right word. I can't quite think of it right now, but it's called the 2K curse. And what I mean by that is, some people have seen a trend over the last half decade of the people that have been on the cover of NBA 2K, and what has happened, a correlation of them being on the cover and then something happening in their career within a year of them being on the cover. What I'm talking about is a player being on the cover and then leaving their respective team, their team that they were on, within the next year or so. I'm talking about 4 out of the last 5. Okay, 4 out of the last 5 cover athletes for NBA 2K have left their team for another within the next year. I'm talking about an example. Why don't we break down a couple of the moves? Anthony Davis is the most recent one. Whenever they first announced he was going to be in the cover of NBA 2K20, he was a member of the New Orleans Pelicans. Later, after we found out, he wanted out of New Orleans, ended up moving to Los Angeles that year. So that's the most recent example and quickest example. It happened to be very quick. He's on the cover, and then boom, he's traded. So a big move there. Not something a lot of people saw coming, but nonetheless, most recent this past year, bam, moves team right away. So Anthony Davis is the most recent example of that. Kyrie Irving is also another example. Was on the cover of 2K18, I believe. Not sure, but all the years on these. But more recently, Kyrie's on the cover of 2K. Shows him in a Cavalier uniform. Boom. Later that year, gets traded to Boston. Before the game comes out, they have to switch the cover from him in Cleveland, or in a Cavs jersey, to him in a Boston jersey. So, again, a very recent example. Kyrie gets named the cover athlete. Boom, move from Cleveland to Boston. If you're seeing a trend, we're seeing usually a player leaving a small market team for a big market team, okay? I don't want to scare any Trailblazer fans or anything, but let's keep going. So another guy, Kevin Durant, was on the cover of 2K15 or 15. After, he wins an MVP award, he gets on the cover. However, loses to Golden State, then leaves small market Oklahoma City Thunder for big market Golden State Warriors. So Kevin Durant, another example, being on the cover, then a year or so later leaves his team for another bigger market. Also, last on my list, LeBron James was on the cover of 2K12 or 13 as a Miami Heat, a member of the Miami Heat. Then a year later moves to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Kind of the reverse as the other guys, moving from a big market to a small market, but nonetheless is on the cover of 2K. Within a year later, moves teams. Is this a trend we're seeing? Is this something stupid we're just paying way too much attention to? Please let me know if you guys are watching on any platforms that are available for comments, like Apple Podcasts or anything else. Leave us a comment on what you guys think, maybe about the 2K curse, if it's real or not. But either way, it's a trend that we see happening. I don't think it's something we should necessarily ignore, but I don't think it's something we should always take so seriously. It's just kind of something that a cool reoccurring pattern. We'll see if it keeps going. Last year, though, we saw Giannis on the cover, and this year we hear rumors about maybe Giannis leaving the Bucks for a bigger market for a different team. Is it a coincidence? Is it because he was on the cover of 2K? Who knows? Either way, I know he's on the cover, and now we're hearing rumors that he may want out. He hasn't said that, but we've heard rumors all year about it, similar to when we heard rumors of KD leaving, LeBron leaving. We've heard rumors about it, and it's no doubt. He doesn't necessarily have the best co-star, best group with him. He's a good group of guys, a great roster. But as far as that co-star, I don't think he necessarily has that number 2 to his number 1. So I could see him leaving. If he does leave, maybe we're saying it's not a 2K curse, maybe it's just a fact, and then that means Dame is basically just the next guy to move. We'll see what happens. I don't think we should be scared, but yeah, congrats to Dame for being on the cover of the regular 2K. Props to him, what he has done, getting even more recognition, what he deserves. Props to Dame. Congratulations to Damian Lillard. Now I want to talk about Zion Williamson, okay? He is the cover athlete of the next-gen edition of the 2K21, and I think this is huge for Zion, huge for his brand. This year, he's averaging almost 24 points, 7 rebounds, shooting 58% from the floor, 46% from the three-point line, so insane stat numbers from a rookie. We know what he brings. We saw him at Duke. He gets eyeballs to the TV screen. When he's playing, you want to watch. Doesn't necessarily matter who he's playing against. Who's going to dominate. The effort he's going to bring. The effort he's going to bring on every possession, which is a large part to his brand and his brand and how much people like him, how much effort he puts out there. His joy of playing the game is a large part, has a large part to do with why people like him so much. And like I just said, Zion playing basketball equals people watching, okay, watching that channel, watching that station, watching Zion play. And 2K, they saw what the NBA did. They saw, them giving Zion a little bit of an easier schedule to make the playoffs. And 2K's like, hey, why don't we get a little bit of money from this, use this guy, put him on the cover of our game, and we might even sell even more copies because of how much people like this kid. It definitely has to do with his play, but it's not all about his play, We aren't 100%. So I know what he brings. I know he's already a superstar in this league, okay? I don't want to debate that or take anything away from Zion. But he's only played 19 games in the league, okay? It's not because of his sustained play. It's because of his personality, his likableness, his intensity, what he brings to the court. Yes. The Zion factor of just people wanting to watch him play. He doesn't look like anybody else playing basketball, that has to do with it. And he's only played 19 games in the league. It isn't just based off of his play in the NBA, which is what it usually is about. But like I said, I can't blame them using, the most popular face, most popular young face in the league today. However, is he the best young player right now? Would he be my number one choice to be on the next generation cover? No, he would not. He's the most popular guy right now for sure. He might sell more copies, but the guy most deserving to be on the next generation cover, the guy who is going to be, in my opinion, leading the next generation, who I'm most confident, at least, in saying he's going to lead the next generation, is a guy in Luka Doncic. In his second season in the NBA, he's averaging 28 points, 9 rebounds, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. Again, second season in the NBA. He's about third or fourth in the MVP voting this year. However, not as popular as a guy like Zion Williamson. Doesn't get as many eyeballs to the TV screen. Not as a flashy or exciting player. However, a very sustainable longevity guy. Not a guy who gets hurt a lot. He's going to play through it. A very tough player. International guy. We saw him translate right away in the NBA, winning the Rookie of the Year award last year, playing all season. So I would have given the award, or I would have given, I would have put Luka on the cover over Zion based on, his second season already averaging almost 30-point triple-double. But like I said, I know what Zion is and what he brings to the league, and like I said, gets eyeballs to the TV screen. No one looks like him when they're playing the game. The joy he plays with, the intensity he plays with, just how ferocious he plays is insane. So props to Zion. I'm happy for him getting even more recognition, getting his name out there even more, building his brand up even more. He's going to sell even more shoes, get even more, endorsement deals. So rightfully so, while you're playing at this higher rate, might as well make as much money as you can. However, I think Luka was more deserving of the award, playing much more games at a higher level than Zion at a longer time. Being roughly, a couple of years older. He's only 21 years old. I don't know if you know that. Luka's only 21 years old, so he is, in fact, leading the next generation. Already brought the Mavericks to the playoffs in his second season, so we know what Luka is. We know what Zion is. Don't want to take anything away from Zion. I simply would have put Luka on there over him. But, they're trying to make money. They're trying to sell video games. And when you see Zion Williamson on the cover of a video game, you're going to want to buy it even more than a guy you might not necessarily know in Luka Doncic. You put Zion on there. That's a face everybody knows. You say the word Zion, that's the guy who, he's a young basketball player, right, from Duke. Yeah, number one pick. The name, it's one name, Zion. Not everyone knows Luka, not as well known as Zion, so I understand the move. I think Luka deserves more props. He'll probably be on like the European or international version. Rightfully so, he definitely should be. But I would have given him the honor of being on the official thing. But again, they're trying to sell covers, games. I understand why. Props to Zion. Props to Damian Lillard. Hopefully they make some more changes to the game than just the actual, graphics. I want to see some changes to the actual game. I'm a big 2K player. However, I do think the game of 2K is not the very best. I think it could be a lot better. I think, the NFL and Madden makes a better video game than NBA 2K, a guy who plays the video games a whole lot. So I do think there are areas to improve in the way of 2K. I'm probably still going to end up buying the game anyway. I'll probably get the Zion version, just because of who he is, and it'll probably cost me more money. We'll see if Kobe's on the Legend Edition. If he is, I'll probably end up spending more money on that one. But nonetheless, congrats to those guys. We'll see who they end up putting on the Legend Edition of NBA 2K. Let me know what you guys think about this. I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break, though. When I come back, I want to talk about my guy Draymond Green. Okay, he was on NBA talk show or a sports talk show a couple days ago, talking about who he thinks has the best odds to win the finals in his odds. And I'm going to talk about that when I come back, give my opinion. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to Extreme Cage Fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, guys. Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Like I said before the break, let's talk about my guy Draymond Green's comments on who should win the NBA Finals this year. So Draymond came out and said, in his opinion, he thinks that the Los Angeles Lakers, are the favorites to win the championship over the Los Angeles Clippers. He did acknowledge that the Clippers, were the better team throughout the season, and even before the season started, people had, the Clippers, even he had the Clippers to be the favorite. But now with the playoffs about to get going, he switched his favorite to the Clippers, to the Lakers, in large part to do. He said it himself with the guy in LeBron James. It's hard to doubt him. He has the most veteran experience of anyone playing in the bubble. And if there's anyone you don't want to doubt, it's him going into this situation. He made that very clear as to why, LeBron is the biggest reason why he gives the edge to the Lakers. However, I want to come out and just say it. I think the Clippers should be the favorite. I don't think the Lakers should be the favorite. However, if you have been listening to my podcast or my episodes on GSMC, I think LeBron and the Lakers will inevitably end up winning the NBA Finals this year. I like their odds. I like their chances over the Clippers, again, similar to Draymond because of that guy in LeBron James. However, on paper, when you're looking at it, I do not think, I've talked about this before, that the Lakers should be the favorites over the Clippers. The Clippers should be the favorite to win the NBA championship this year, okay? I don't necessarily see a lot of things going against them. I see more odds in their favor than not. The first step, let's talk about how, all season they've had roster, I don't want to say issues, but, they've had people in and out of the lineup all season long. Like I said, it's no issue. They've had guys like Paul George didn't even play for half the season. Kawhi Leonard, load management for a lot of the season. Patrick Beverley's been hurt for a lot of the season. So a lot of these big guys, big names, haven't necessarily been in a lot of games together. And we saw the streak that when their team was healthy, they won like 9-10 straight games. They didn't lose until the Lakers ended up beating them. But we saw what they did, not losing at full strength for a decent amount of time, before not even playing together for the majority of the season. But let's talk about who they are and why they should be favorited. Because in my opinion, they do have the best roster in basketball. Top to bottom, they have got to be the deepest team in basketball. First up, led by the reigning Finals MVP in Kawhi Leonard, this season averaging over 25 points, getting a decent amount of rebounds, only a couple of assists. He's doing it on both ends of the court, like we know, offensively and defensively. We know what Kawhi does. We saw it especially on display in the playoffs last year with Toronto. He's leading this group when he's playing, of course. A guy who has load managed a decent amount this season, been kind of the face of load management this season. However, hasn't necessarily translated to a whole lot of losses. We see them still being second in the conference, despite having their stars be in and out of the lineup, which is another pro and another reason I give the favorite to them, because they haven't been healthy all season like the Lakers for the most part. They've had their ups and downs, and now more than ever, they're getting a chance to play at full strength, not something they had a chance to do. This hiatus has given them a chance, in my opinion, to get to full strength, to get all the players they have up to speed and ready to play. The new additions like Reggie Jackson and Marcus Morris, it's given those guys a chance to get ready and to make this big playoff push. But they also have a co-star in Paul George, also a two-way player. Last year, we saw him top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year award and in the MVP voting. So a testament to who he is. And last year, some of the best basketball we've seen him play, arguably before, besides his play on the Pacers in Indiana in his early days when LeBron was in Miami. But, we saw Paul playing some awesome basketball last season. Like I said, top 3 in the MVP voting as well as Defensive Player of the Year voting. So a testament to who he is and what he can do. However, lots of injuries this year, had that shoulder surgery, has been in and out of the lineup, hasn't played a whole bunch with the guys who have been playing all season. So that's the biggest issue with that Clipper team chemistry. Can they get it all clicking at the same time, since they haven't had so much time together? Like I said, the hiatus should have helped them get to rest, get to full strength. But they aren't just being wielded by their front 2 guys, their 2 all-stars, which the Los Angeles Lakers are. They simply have 2 guys and then a big drop-off after those 2 guys. However, with the Los Angeles Clippers, they have a 6-man, basically 2 6-men of the year, the 6 men of the year, basically, in Lou Williams, who's averaging 18 points, and Montrezl Harrell, also averaging basically 18, 17 points, also getting about 7, 8 rebounds a game. So they got those 2 monsters coming off of their bench who could be starters on basically any other team in the league. They choose to come off the bench and add to that Clipper depth, which again, adding to the monster, another reason why I give them the edge over the Clippers on paper, just off players, off firepower. You got to give them the edge. And then, they had those scorers coming off, but they also have defenders and tough guys, veteran players coming off the bench like Marcus Morris, Patrick Beverley. Tough guys, play some tough defense, give you high minutes, smart guys as well, have been in the league a while. And in Marcus Morris's case, he's coming off with the Knicks, his best season yet, chose to have a lesser role with the Clippers, okayed the trade with the Clippers, chose to leave the Knicks, and power to him, might end up winning a championship because of his willingness to take a lesser role than what he was originally at. So props to Marcus Morris. Also, you have guys like Reggie Jackson, Landry Shamet, scorers, especially in Reggie Jackson's case, guys who have been there and done that. We saw Reggie Jackson years back have that huge playoff game for OKC, so he's capable of doing that again, in my opinion. Still had some good basketball left in him in Detroit. Now we see him in a new opportunity with the Los Angeles Clippers in a lesser role. However, we'll see how he does in this lesser role. Either way, they have him coming off the bench, possibly starting, most likely coming off the bench. But what guys to have coming off of your bench? Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell, Reggie Jackson, maybe Landry Shamet, Patrick Beverley, or Marcus Morris. I know some of those guys are going to start, obviously, but a lot of them are going to come off of the bench. And the fact that they have that much depth coming off of their bench, also, then they have the 2 amazing starters and stars in Paul George and Kawhi who do it on both ends of the court. They have multiple defenders to throw at the Lakers guards and forwards and any other team. They can match up well with the Clippers, the Rockets, the Lakers, the Bucks. They match up well with basically every team in the league. Hard for me to rule them out. If any team is going to win the championship besides the Lakers. If I have two teams, I'm saying Lakers and Clippers. Those are my two highlights. Those are my two favorites to win, but I do think the Clippers should have the edge over the Lakers. The Clippers should have the edge. Also, we don't want to forget about the head coach in Doc Rivers, assistant coach in Ty Lue. They're third in offensive rating this year, fifth in defensive rating, so they're playing at high levels on both ends of the court. And like I've been saying, they haven't necessarily clicked yet. We haven't seen the moment where they're playing their very best basketball. I think the best basketball is still ahead of this team, which is actually pretty scary to think about. And then when you look at the matchups they've had, at least, the teams they've played, they've beaten the Lakers 2 out of the 3 times. Yes, the last time the Lakers did beat them, it was a pretty cool way the Lakers beat them. It was in big fashion, dominant fashion. They simply were the much better team. But, in the second matchup, it simply didn't go the Lakers' way the last couple of minutes. However, first matchup, first game of the year, Clippers clearly looked like the better team. So it's been up and down all year, but now the Clippers should be at full strength. I'd have to give the edge to them. Like I said earlier, though, I do understand Draymond sticking up for his guy and LeBron, kind of his guy, even though they've played in the finals a whole lot and kind of have a little bit of a rivalry of their own. LeBron versus Warriors rivalry, but still, he's supporting his guy, rightfully so, in LeBron, not doubting him, similar to what I'm doing, not in love with the Lakers roster. However, I do really like the guy in LeBron James, have a whole lot of faith in him and what he can do on the basketball court, despite the work, and despite the help he has around him, and despite the people that are around him. So I got faith in him, despite the depth and firepower of this Clipper team. But because of the firepower, depth, and veteran experience of this Clipper team, I think they should be the favorites. Again, I understand where Draymond's coming from, but on paper, Clippers should be the favorite. I give the slight edge to them. Can't wait to see that Laker-Clipper matchup. It's basically going to be the finals. That's going to be the best matchup of the NBA's postseason. Can't wait for it to actually take place. Hopefully it does take place. We don't get robbed of the best possible series. I doubt we do. I hope it goes 7 games, 6 or 7 games, and we get the best possible basketball, we possibly can. I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break. I've been talking about LeBron and the Lakers and the Clippers a whole lot. Why don't we talk about the other guy in the GOAT debate, if not, the lead guy in that GOAT debate, in Michael Jordan and his Chicago Bulls. So I want to talk about him and the Chicago Bulls when I return. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back, guys, to the final segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast. I'm Casey Foreman, and like I said before the break, I want to talk about Michael Jordan and those Chicago Bulls once again. If you missed it on my last episode, at the end of the show, I talked about the 2017 Warriors in the 95-96 Bulls, who would have won in the 7-game series. So if you missed that, make sure you go back on my last episode on Monday and check that out. But today, I want to talk more about those Bulls. And if you watched the Last Dance documentary, if you didn't watch it, I highly recommend it. It was a fantastic documentary. Really explained Michael and the Bulls to people like me who weren't able to live it, firsthand. So I love the documentary, and if anyone didn't get the chance to watch it, I recommend you go do so any way you can, because I recommend it. Totally something everyone should watch if you're into basketball and into the whole Michael Jordan debate all the time. So definitely something you need to watch. But if you did watch it, and if you didn't, I wanna advise you to stop listening right now, because I don't want to ruin anything for you. But throughout the entire documentary, we are told, Jerry Reinsdorf has told us that, Jerry Krause was the villain. He was the reason the Bulls broke up. He told Phil Jackson, there's no way in hell you're coming back. You're not coaching the Bulls if you go 82-0, no matter what, I'm starting over. So Phil was told that. Jerry Reinsdorf, Phil Jackson told us that Jerry Krause told Phil Jackson that at the beginning of the Last Dance season. However, at the end of the Last Dance documentary, Jerry Reinsdorf somewhat drops a bombshell on us all, everybody in the media. Nobody saw this coming or knew this. At least whoever did know this did not release it. But Jerry Reinsdorf did in fact offer Phil Jackson one more year of head coaching. After that Last Dance run, they beat the Utah Jazz in the NBA Finals, get that 6th championship. Phil Jackson was in fact offered a 1-year extension to do one last run, one more Last Dance over again, and Phil Jackson turned it down. So in the whole Jerry Krause villain narrative, it really switches the whole thing and puts it on Phil a little bit. And, it wasn't necessarily Jerry's fault. Yes, Jerry and you did have a terrible relationship. Maybe that was Jerry's fault. But he wasn't the reason you couldn't come back, because you could have come back, Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson could have been the coach of the Chicago Bulls for one more additional season. He turned it down. I want to talk about the hypothetical. What if he did say yes? What if Phil Jackson said, you know what, screw it, let's run it back and get our 7th championship? Would they have gone 7 for 7? Let's break it down. Okay, so the first aspect, and one of the more important aspects, has got to be Scottie Pippen and that contract situation, because, if you did watch The Last Dance, one of the bigger issues in the season was Scottie's contract. Yeah, at one point he wanted a trade, at one point said he played his last game in Chicago during that season, said he was not going to play another game for that team. Obviously they figured it out. He ended up continuing on when the season they win a championship. But, one of the bigger issues with Scottie and the Bulls was that contract. Scottie felt massively underpaid, which he was. And the next year we saw him get, or within the next couple of years, we saw him get a max contract from Houston. So it's going to be hard to get Scottie Pippen to stay on another minimum contract or low-paying contract when he knows he deserves more. It's going to be hard to get Scottie to sign on board when he barely did it last season and almost blew up the entire thing mid-season. So it's going to be hard to go through an entire other season with Scottie Pippen in that contract situation. So that's one factor that's going to play into it. Jerry Krause and his relationship with the Bulls is another factor. He had a bad relationship with Phil Jackson. He had a bad relationship with Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. Not guys that talk well about the late Jerry Krause. Guys, even though he has passed away, will still continue to talk bad on him because they had such bad experiences with him. Did not have great relationships, had bad relationships, in fact. And that's another thing you have to think of. would Phil and Michael and Scotty been able to toughen it out for a whole nother season with Jerry Krause? Jerry running his mouth, the entire time, them throwing their jab shots at Jerry about his weight and his size and stuff. It goes both ways. I don't know if both parties would have been able to withstand that. And Jerry Krause basically had an unwritten agreement with the next coach of the Bulls. He was basically grooming him while Phil was still there. So slap in the face to Phil Jackson, slap in the face to Jerry Krause if Phil Jackson stays. So either way, it's somewhat of a lose-lose situation for Phil and Jerry Krause. But for Jerry Reinsdorf, who cares? You just write the checks, get the championships, and Michael Jordan didn't necessarily care. He's on record saying that if Phil comes back, I'd come back and do one more run. He didn't necessarily care too much about the ill relationship between him and Jerry. Another thing that you got to think of, they would have had to play the Knicks and the Pacers again before they reached those finals. The year prior, or the year they went 6 for 6, obviously going 7 games with the Indiana Pacers. A very tough series. They would have to play that very same team the year later. So that team wasn't going anywhere. Maybe they, progressed or regressed a little bit, but still, the Bulls didn't necessarily get any better. Wouldn't have gotten necessarily any better from year, to the next year. So either way, both teams are pretty much looking the same. The Bulls do have to go through that Pacer team again. Who knows if they could go through that Pacer team again? Maybe they after going 7 games with them, they know how they play and they run right through them. Who knows? Who knows with Michael Jordan? But the hypothetical's there. Who knows if they could get past them again? And then they also have to play the team that made it to the finals, Patrick Ewing and his Knicks. Even though they ended up getting swept in the finals by the Spurs, the Bulls would have to play this Knicks team, a team they have played many times before. So either way, they have to play a tough Knicks and Pacer teams they've played many times before, teams that know their game plan as well as they know theirs. So tough series they'd have to go through to get to the finals. And then the opponent they would have to play in the finals, the San Antonio Spurs, who at that time were arriving as a dynasty. Let's talk about them that season, They in the postseason sweep the LA Lakers with Shaq and Kobe. Okay, yes, Shaq and Kobe were on the Los Angeles Lakers at that time. They get swept by Tim Duncan and the Spurs. The Spurs then go on to beat the Trailblazers and then get on to the finals. The Trailblazers, also a team that played the Bulls, gave them a little bit of trouble in the postseason, but not too much. But still, we see the Spurs have no issue with these two teams going right over them, making it to the finals. Spurs then go on to sweep the Knicks I think in 5 games. Gentlemen sweep the Knicks. Blow them out, clearly a mismatch. The Spurs were the better team, led by Tim Duncan, who that year averaged 21 points, 11 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks. So he's doing it on both ends of the court, Mr. Fundamental. And then also David Robinson, the general, averaging 16 points, 10 rebounds, also about 2.5 blocks per game. So 2 elite post defenders, 2 elite post defenders that no doubt in my mind would disrupt the Bulls offense down low. Not a great long range shooting team, so a team that loved the mid range and down low. So 2 elite big men that definitely would have given Michael and the Bulls some issues down low. Michael's going to be Michael no matter what, but Tim is going to take away some rebounds from Rodman. David Robinson's going to grab a whole lot of rebounds. There's not going to be a whole lot of rebounds left, after Tim Duncan and David Robinson. So, and the overall group that Spurs team had, established themselves as a beginning of the Spurs dynasty. I know the Bulls are the Bulls, Michael's Michael, but, I don't necessarily think that the Bulls go 7 for 7 if they stick around and they keep it all together, all the things I listed, Scotty's contract, the relationship with Phil and Jerry, Michael and Jerry, Scotty and Jerry, the competition they would have had to play. The league was only getting better and better. That Spurs team had only just arrived. They'd have to play the teams they've played prior than. And the elite post presence Michael and the Bulls would have had to deal with, not necessarily something they have played before. great coach in Greg Popovich. So I don't necessarily see the Bulls going 7-for-7. I think they somewhat not ruin it, but they lose by going for it again, kind of knocking the narrative a little bit of untouchable in the finals. However, I do think that the Bulls could have won more than just 6. Not after that 6th championship, but between the third and the 4th one. When Michael retired, I think that was the time for them to get the extra 2 rings. So then, if Michael stays on, then, I don't want people to think I'm a Michael hater. I am in no way that. If Michael does stick around for those 2 championships or those 2 seasons, between the two, or that one season, and is there for the entire 2nd season at least, I think they do go on to win at least 1 more championship, so Michael would have 7. So if he doesn't go and play baseball, I do think he has at least 7 championships. But if you're just basing off the fact he just sticks around that last year in Chicago, 1 extra year, I don't think they get it done. I think they ended it on a perfect note, going 6-for-6. Phil ends it at the perfect time, takes a couple years off, and then goes and joins Shaq and Kobe in LA, wins some championships there, retires. So I think Phil played it perfectly. The Zen master knew what he was doing. Michael, despite wanting to go for that 7th championship, I think it was good for him and his legacy that they did not go for it, because how much, in fact, would it have helped his legacy going for 7-for-7 than 6-for-6, It could have done more to hurt than to help. So they definitely blew it up at the right time. Jerry Krause proved, it was, in fact, he did have a large part to do with putting that team together, but the willing driving force was Michael Jordan, Phil Jackson, Scottie Pippen. The players and coaching staff were the main driving force. That was proven after the team was blown up. If you haven't watched The Last Dance documentary, like I said, I completely recommend going and watching it. And if you already did, I bet this is getting, you wanting to go and watch it again. I might want to go watch it again as myself. If you enjoyed today's show, however, I want to urge you to leave a positive comment or review for the station, for the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, however you are listening. I want to urge you to leave a nice review. And then on social media, I want to urge you guys to follow our Twitter account, Facebook, any social media you are on. I want to urge you to follow. We're kind of getting those accounts going again, kind of getting more interactive. So please go ahead and follow those. My name is Casey. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Thank you again for your continued support. I'll be right back here next week on Monday with even more NBA news. But as far as today goes, that's it for the GSMC Basketball Podcast. I'll see you guys next week.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.